If we do things the right way, rather than what might be a $200,000 to $300,000 case, we're turning those routinely into $700,000 to $1 million cases. I'm really confident right now that anyone we have can go and get $1 million result on a case. Mr. Walston's case. So we got a $1.2 million verdict on that case. It's really been pretty life-changing as far as just how I view trials. I realized quickly, if you're going to win these cases, you're up against a different caliber of lawyer, and you've got to kind of bring out a different beast in yourself.
Welcome to Personal Injury Mastermind. Let's get into it. Settle cases in under 60 days, turn young attorneys into $1 million litigators, and carve out a brand that owns the trucking niche. Today, Jon Hollan explains all that and more. Jon is managing partner at Sam Aguiar Injury Lawyers, where speed is strategy. I'm Chris Stryer, founder and CEO of Rankings.io. If you're ready to move faster and win bigger, this episode is for you. Let's go. So we just had Sam on. We had a great conversation. Loved hearing about your guys' success. You got, 10 plus attorneys, over 45 staff. You're doing over 100 cases a month. But now we're going to kind of get in the weeds. And you're a little bit like a local celebrity, right? Our listeners in Kentucky might recognize you from the Truck Talk on WKYT. Tell us about what Truck Talk is and how you lined up this opportunity.
I guess we're going on a year now. And man, you talk about uncomfortable. A podcast is pretty easy after you get used to being in a television studio in one of Kentucky's biggest media providers. But Truck Talk, it's a 3-minute segment that we do once a week. It's not necessarily getting into case specific or really traditional marketing as much as it is a opportunity for me to just talk about the trucking industry, safety principles, issues that are affecting everyday Kentuckians, who wonder about these cases or have been impacted by these cases, or even truck drivers in the trucking community themselves. We just talk about some of the things that we've learned about, in the 10 plus years that we've been doing these cases, and really advocate, not only for the safety of Kentuckians, but also the safety of the trucking industry and with technology and some of the, big shifts that we've had the past several years.
I think that's the big lesson I think a lot of PI attorneys miss is if you're just a proponent of safety, you still get the accident cases. So what kind of reactions are you seeing from the community about the show?
It's been really good. The outreach that even from current clients and just other attorneys that I know that see the show or see some of the segments or some of the sound bites from the show. It's mostly positive.
Put my marketing hat on. How do you get like an opportunity like this? Is it transparently? Is it pay to play? Is it you're invited because you're a member of the community? Like how does this type of opportunity occur? How could other PI attorneys in maybe their state get an opportunity to come on a big show like this?
I had those same questions when it first started. So we were approached. It's WYMT. They're the biggest news outlet in Central Kentucky. They approached us for a meeting. They had a prior attorney partner, and that had ended. And they were interested in, whether our office, based on, we handle some cases that are pretty high profile at times, especially Sam with the Breonna Taylor case. So our firm is, really well known throughout Kentucky. But we were approached. It's not free. There is a small fee that we pay to get the opportunity to do it. But really, they've been really great. It's part of a program they have called Everyday Kentucky. So it airs, once a week, and then they do a lot of different media buys, social spots, along with the content as well. But the thing that's been, I think, the most useful for us in a lot of ways is we get access to all the raw footage. So, you're talking about each month, 10 to 15 minutes of studio quality raw footage without the noise that they add in, without some of the graphics. And we've been able to repurpose that for a lot of different ways, for social platforms, YouTube and a couple other different things that we've been trying with it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think the name of the game on social media, at least, is video. If you don't have video on your student static posts, it just doesn't work anymore.
Yes, I think a lot of things I've learned from you over the years and your different guests and your podcast, but just having that trust to really niche down. I'm blessed to have a lot of really good phone calls, whether it's, serious car accidents or, even serious premises cases, but, getting to a point where I'm comfortable, putting myself out there as, no, I'm a trucking attorney. I handle truck crashes in Kentucky. And through the media platform that we're using, we also have a website that we've developed, semijustice.com, which is solely for our trucking brand. But it's, when it gets going really good and things are really high, I still have trouble, I think, trusting it at times. How do I say no to some of these other cases that either people who are injured want me in, or other attorneys want me in. It's just it's a learning process.
Yeah, that's the big challenge. From a focus perspective, it's the shiny objects keep creeping in, and it's just keep batting them away, and it's hard to do. And I think everybody faces that, in different aspects. One of the things I want to talk about is your role as managing partner. Tell me about your high value activities, where you kind of live from the managing partner side.
The role that I have taken on the last several years has really been the litigator of the highest value cases. The media, some of the marketing things that I've gotten involved in the last few years. I do those as Sam needs me to, and has wanted me to help certain areas that we're growing in. But really, my level of comfort where I want to be, it's working cases. We have some really good young attorneys. I'm still pretty young myself, so I think people kind of look at me crazy when I say young attorney. But I've really enjoyed the last couple of years working with our younger attorneys on the best cases that they have, and I think that they're starting to realize more that, if we do things the right way, that, rather than what might be a two to a $300,000 case, we're turning those routinely into 700 to $1 million cases. Same exact case. We're not really doing a lot different. A lot of it's just building the confidence in these young guys. And we have a team right now that I tell Sam every day, from the, I don't want to say back of the bench, but from the youngest person in our firm to the most senior person in our firm, I'm really confident right now that anyone we have can go and get $1 million result on a case. And they're proving that month in, month out.
And you teed me up there. So leaning into that, you know, your reputation as the youngest attorney in Kentucky to secure a seven-figure verdict is pretty wild. So maybe we just tell me that story about that case, what happened there. I think our audience would love to hear it.
Yeah, that was really fun, and it came at an interesting time. We went into a trial near about 4 or 5 months after I'd been into the firm. We had a jury trial, and I was in love. I mean, it was like a drug to me. I knew then and there, I was like, this is what I'm going to spend my life doing. But that was a good outcome. Then the next 5 years, I think my first trial was 1 or 2 months after graduating law school. We lost that case, very hard case. We lost, went to the Court of Appeals, got reversed, and ended up getting a nice result on it. But
Right.
it was 3 or 4 years. I mean, we had lost 4 or 5 cases, and I just was really questioning, the amount of money we're putting into this. Am I in the right field? Can Sam trust me to go and do this? Am I letting our attorneys, our staff, our clients down? But then things kind of turned around, and then came Mr. Walston's case. So it was actually a police pursuit case, Bullitt County, Kentucky, which is a very rural area. I guess that would have been 2019, May of 2019. Sam, he's always been really cutting edge. So we used a lot of video footage in that case. We weren't really stagnant as far as the way we presented our evidence. And even though it was, a conservative venue, the officer involved in that case had actually ran for sheriff. We were there at the courthouse, and he knew everyone. I mean, he knew from the moment we walked in to the moment we walked out every day. This defendant knew everybody. So it didn't necessarily feel great. But we got a $1.2 million verdict on that case. And for me, with that trial and then the wins that we had gotten just before, and then since we got there after, it's really been pretty life changing as far as just how I view trials and really the opportunities it's given us in our practice.
Well, thank you for the transparency too. I think I don't think, many people want to talk about the licks, the early challenges and how you overcome them, the grit, the perseverance to continue and now become a top, trial attorney and have a, great litigating practice. Um, I kind of wanted to lean into these Amazon delivery and FedEx ground contractor accidents. How did you get in the space of specific Amazon delivery, FedEx type cases? How are they different from, say, an 18-wheeler case?
It's not something I set out to do. I didn't just wake up one morning and think, oh, I want my cases to be against Amazon or FedEx. We just had a few cases come in, really, really catastrophic. One came in and it would have been, let's see, just before Christmas of 2016. And Chris, that's the one that really did it for me. I grew up in Eastern Kentucky, kind of in the coal mine area of Hazard. This crash had happened in Rockcastle, Kentucky, where Interstate 75 goes through Kentucky, which is, unfortunately one of the roads that so many of our bad crashes have happened on. And one gentleman was killed, the other was horrifically injured. Stop traffic, a FedEx truck with two trailers plowed into stop traffic at 80 miles an hour. So, obviously it was a miracle that our client lived. At the time, I would have been, I guess, probably, I don't know, 28, 29. I'd just gotten engaged. Life was really rapidly changing for me. And that case just took us to a different level of law. Sam was beyond obsessed with the FedEx model. We had, at one point on that case, I was at a hearing in Eastern Kentucky, and there were lawyers from Knoxville, Memphis, Pittsburgh, and Louisville, and it's me and one other lawyer there, so it's literally the proverbial David versus Goliath. So handling those cases, I got to see, not only the resources that very powerful defendants are willing to put, to fight against a single claim or a family that's been hurt really badly, but I also got to learn for the first time about the specific designs that companies like FedEx or Amazon have, as far as shielding themselves from liability, and just a different style and speed of litigation than I had ever encountered in my life. I realized quickly, Sam and I both, that if you're going to take these cases, if you're going to win these cases, you're up against a different caliber of lawyer, and you've got to kind of bring out a different beast in yourself if you're going to go and beat those companies in high stakes litigation.
And I can tell just from, our conversation just in this short time, it seems like, you mentioned you kind of knew what was happening, right? You just got engaged. You just, you know, you kind of have this picture in your head. So it speaks to like the obsession over the case and handling it and making sure it's covered. And, so does that mean, more expert witnesses? Does that mean, more mock trials? What goes into the preparation for a big case like this?
I can close my eyes and I feel like I'm back there again, as part of that case and different moments in that case. But it really was all the above. There were medical experts on the case. We had a doctor from Harvard Medical School. There was a trucking practices expert, I believe, from Montana. There was an expert in Florida. I was trying to add it up recently. Someone had asked me about that case. I think between Sam and I, we went to pretty close to 10 different states while that case was pending, thousands upon thousands of pages of documents. And if someone would have asked me at the beginning if we could handle that, if our firm could handle that with our resources, I would have said, I don't know. It seems crazy to me. I don't know if I have those skills or if we have that kind of organization. But now, looking back, it was life changing. It was career defining. And the attorney from Pittsburgh, who's the top dog, he was the lead counsel. He just said, "Man, our client wants to talk about this. We can't keep at this the pace you guys are going." So
Wow.
they were starting to wave the white flag. And then I was actually, as fate would have it, my wife and I were married on New Year's Eve, 2017. The first or second day of our honeymoon in Buenos Aires, the case settled. So it's
That's
pretty cool.
incredible. What a
Yeah,
moment in time.
yeah,
That's
it was
incredible.
cool.
But when I had Sam on, we talked about your guys' structure, like for case management, right? Where you use a team of 3 people per case, a lawyer, a case manager, a legal assistant. How does this method of case handling take away any stigma associated with being an advertising firm? Talk to me about that structure.
That's kind of a hard question for me because it's all I've ever known. I think it's the right way. I think it's the only way because clients get a dedicated point of contact. Mine's even a little bit different, Chris, because my case manager is my brother, and my uh, assistant is my soon-to-be brother-in-law. So
That's
it
awesome.
very is much a family affair. A lot of times when I get cases, other law firms have had them, and it might be several other law firms, or it might be a client that has had prior experiences with other law firms. And the thing that they tell me the most is the level of communication that they get from our office. It's not calling into a switchboard. If I want to talk to John, I get to talk to John. If I need to talk to Josh, that's my brother, the case manager, I hear from him every other week on the dot. I don't have to worry about where things stand with my case. If anything, we might have clients that say, hey, we maybe do every 3 to 4 weeks, every another 1 to 2 weeks. And it's, Sam has been so big. Um, in as far as running our firm from a customer service perspective. We really are client first. I was a referee for years. I thought I wanted to do that before I became an attorney. So really, managing people. My grandpa used to tell me that we're all in the people business. I don't care how big
Mhm.
you get or what you want to be, you're in the people business. So never forget that. And it's just so true. So I think having that dedicated pod to each team and each case, I just think that's the biggest advantage that we get in it.
Yeah, let me ask some follow-up questions on that. I would like to hear your thought process on this is like the the caseload, right? It's okay. So, and I'm asking this because, we have the same situation from an agency perspective. It's like, well, how many account managers per client? And I'm like, well, there's bigger, some firms are bigger, some are smaller, and et cetera. So it kind of ebbs and flows. But on your side, I mean, you're handling these large cases. So do you have a much smaller caseload? And then, yeah, talk to me about, the structure and like utilization and how you think about caseload.
Maybe work on only a handful of cases. I'm getting in and I'm doing the things that I've got to have, hours to do, and that's what leads to the really really big outlier results. So my level of comfort has really changed a lot over the years. I think the highest I was ever at was, just under 150 maybe. And that was more pre-litigation, insurance claim driven
Hmm.
versus litigation, and it was just way too many. I could manage it. It's doable, but I think the work-life balance at that point and some of the joy that I got from it, at least, it was a little rocky at times. And some attorneys, live very comfortably with no desire to litigate. And really in a volume shop, I think you have to have the different skill sets and the attorneys willing to take cases really whatever direction they need to go. And just having different teams with different focuses really goes a long way in our office.
Love every bit of that. I was just wondering if you could just share briefly just a couple other. I'm just interested in this structure. I think it's excellent. I love the overall thought process of it. Um, Maybe just the duties of the case manager, the legal assistant. Just overall how you kind of, your pod, you work cohesively. I'm sure you meet on an ongoing basis, but like how do you chop up the main duties between each of the roles?
As much as we like uniformity, that does differ some from team to team. Like
Hmm.
myself, I'm not much of a micromanager. I'm really big on trust. Whether it's my own team or if I'm co-counseling a case, I pretty much have to have like full trust in the team I'm working with. So we work off of Litify, and one of the things we've always been big on our office is case planning. And that is we're going to have Litify or whatever software we're using at the time. We're going to have the checklist and the sort of built-in case management task that trigger based on the type of case and the caliber of case that it is. But now we have a case plan uh, task item. So what that is if you're the managing attorney on a file, before your team can really even work on that case, you have to manually go in, complete an initial audit of the case, give basically a general overview of the case, and then give specific task items for the different members of your team. If it's a trucking case, if it's an auto case, if it's a premises case, that initial investigation is really going to be a lot different. So that's one of the biggest things. And I think we're seeing a lot of huge benefit from it, not only on some of the results that we're getting, but also just the speed with which we're getting some of those results. It's, the frequency in which our office, gets auto cases settled within, 30 to 60 days. It's unlike anything I've ever seen.
Wow.
Our time on desk has always been far less than anyone that I've ever looked at in the industry. And a lot of that is just built on, I think, our pod method with our teams, the initial case planning and workup, and really just the trust amongst the teams of, A plus B gets their job done, C is going to be really good. And just it goes a long way.
It's the kind of diagnosis, the planning component, so you can dial in and before you start executing wildly and throwing paint against the wall, it's like, here's the plan, let's execute on it. Has these similarities to these other cases that we worked on. So I think that's incredible. John, this has been awesome. This has been a lot of fun. One final question. Where can people go to connect with you and learn more?
Semi-justice, that's as far as our trucking practice and a lot of the things that we do for our trucking work, there's going to be a lot on. Happy to give out my email. It's jhollan@kylawoffice.com. Have a 3-year-old at home, so I'm not as active as I once was on some of the travel circuits, but I still like to do at least in a good year 3 to 4 of the national conferences each year, and really love connecting, and I'm kind of a nerd for all these things, so if anyone ever has questions or they want to learn more about me or our practice, feel free to reach out.
That's it for this episode of Personal Injury Mastermind. If you got value today, do me a favor, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who wants to dominate their market. I'm Chris Stryer. See you next time.